Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Demai, Perek Aleph, Halacha Gimel. We will be learning today Daf Ches, and we left off at Daf Zayin Amid Bey, 6 lines before the bottom of the Amid by the dot, and Rabbi Pinchas Ben Yair continuing to learn miraculous stories about Rav Pinchas Ben Yair. And as we explained yesterday, that what was unique in his Avodah, which is the Avodah of uniquely at Tzaddik, is their capacity of affecting his hapcha, which means that when a person is in the beginning of one's Avodah, when a person is on the level of a Beinani, a person has to constantly be involved with his skafia, which is skafia would also mean defending oneself from a certain darkness that we don't yet have the koyach to transform. Defending oneself means to separate myself from thoughts that are inappropriate, when I could, from emotions that are inappropriate, which means I'm separated from it, which means I cannot transform it. Dafke, a tzaddik who affects the level of his hapcha, right, where their nefesh habahamis itself, right, becomes completely transformed, that enables them to also transform mamish, part of the world, as we began yesterday with the story of Rav Pinchas Ben Yair with his chamoy. Just to point out, and I brought with me a babli, that as we said already by brachas, and we pointed it out in a peya, that many stories, when they are written in the Yerushalmi, Pashut, you read them in detail, they're not written the same way. Just as an example, yesterday, right, how did we get into this whole Rav Pinchas Ben Yair? Because the Mishnah says that if a person buys the mai from an Amaretz, but he buys it not for consumption, it's exempt from the laws of the mai. One of the examples is a person buys it libehema. Remember that? And the whole kasha is that if food that's only bought libehema is completely excluded from the din of the mai, then what would be the issue with the behema itself eating the mai? That was the kasha. And in the Babli, and all of this is in Chol and Dav Zayin Amud Beis, the Gemara gives a different answer than the Gemara gives over here. The Gemara over there says, based also what we learned today here yesterday, that I'm reading inside Babli Dav Zayin Amud Beis, that Loishanu, when did we learn that food that's bought libehema is exempt? Ela shalakachen mitchila libehema. If it was bought, like we said, it's what was your intent when you bought it. Aval lakachen mitchila adam. But if you bought it for human consumption, even if you changed your mind later, so the Gemara in Bavli says it wasn't a chumrah. Rav Pinchas Ben Yair was arguing that his household bought that food for human consumption. So it was included in the obligations of the mai. I know the animal can eat the mai, but at least the food itself was mechuyev to be tight on the level of the mai. Here in the Yerushalmi, we learned a different answer. Here in the Yerushalmi, the Gemara says, you're right. It was bought lebehema. Rav Pinchas Ben Yair had such a level of chumrah for himself that he would not even eat food prior to separating the mai maisres, even if it was bought lebehema. And like we said, since he wouldn't do it, his animal also wouldn't do it. Okay, now we're going to have more stories based on, as we explained, this concept of Hisabcha, which gives him a unique power to elevate even the animal kingdom. We're going to learn stories that Bechlal express the power and the bracha that comes from separating maisres, and in the reverse, the lack of parnasa or not good consequences that come about when a person doesn't properly separate all of the maisres. We're going to have another story of Rav Pinchas Ben Yair of a trip that he made. Again, we'll read it inside. In the Babli, he went to do Pidyon Shavuim. It sounds here in the Yerushalmi that he went lebeis havaad. He went to learn. We'll see if we could reconcile it or not. Again, these nuances are very interesting. What was the trip for? We're going to learn through these stories the shita of Rabbeinu Hakadosh, the shita of Rabbi, that shmita bisman hazeh is only midrabanan. What does bisman hazeh mean? So Rabbi links shmita and yovel, and he holds that whenever yovel is not noyik, shmita midoiraisa is not noyik. Why would yovel not be noyig? Because for yovel, you have to have kol yoshva oleo, which means two things. First of all, the word kol yoshva oleo doesn't mean that all of the Jews have to be living in Israel. There's always going to be a Jew traveling. Imagine a world with no Jew traveling. Kol yoshva oleo means, according to most, that the majority of each shevet is living in Eretz Yisrael, and they are living in the part of Eretz Yisrael that was given to that Shevet. All of that ended before the Churban Bayis Rishon. First of all, there was the Golus of the 10 Shvatim. And even though we know from Chazal, and this is undisputed, that the Shvatim returned, King Yoshio brought them back, but not all of them came back. And because of that, whether Yovel returned or not, we learned this in Erechin, we learned this in other Masechtas, but certainly after Churban of Nebuchadnezzar, we never had the majority of the Shvatim living in the lands designated for them. So Yovel was not Noyeg. So Shemitah is not Noyeg. And because of that, we'll learn a story where Rabbi felt that because there was a huge drought in Eretz Yisrael, Shemitah was only Midrabanan. People are starving for that one drought. Rabbi wanted to convene the Sanhedrin to undo the Darabanan and to allow people to eat from the produce and to grow and to plant and to grow. But Rav Pinchas ben Yair did away with that. We're going to learn a final story of Rav Pinchas ben Yair, which we have in the Babli, in Yevamis and in Bava Kama, also different. And then we'll learn at the end, if we'll have time, stories of other greats, Rab Chanina ben Doisa, all of these miracle Tanoim of Rabbi Tarfin, how Hashem protected them from eating macholos asuros, and all of that was in contrast to Rab Ze'era, as we began yesterday, that was not given that protection on some level. And that is why he says that if the other earlier ones were Kimalachim, Anu Kibanayadam, the earlier ones like Kibanayadam, we are like Chamoidim, and not even like the Chamoid of Rav Pinchas ben Yair. Okay, guys, Dav Zayin Amid Beis. Then you have a Gemara over there, six lines before the bottom of the Amid. Another story. Rav Pinchas ben Yair Azal Achad Asad. He went to a certain location. We're not writing why. But when he got there, Asoin Legabi, the people that lived there came to him and they told him, Amrulei, Achbaraya Achal Iburan, that our grain is being eaten up by mice. All right. Now we also learned, remember in Bava Metzia, for example, many people are learning Daf Hayomi, right? That the mitzvah of Hashavas Haveda, that only if the item that I found is being destroyed do I have an obligation to do something about it. And when it comes to produce, there's a certain norm amount of destruction of loss of produce, also connected to rodents, but it's a very small amount. And when it's not that, you got a problem. So what happened? So Gazar Alein Utsematon, Rav Pinchas ben Yair made a gzeira to gather them. Now I want you to know that one of the specific black magic prohibitions that the Torah says we may not do is called choyver chaver, which is a certain technique which they use by tapping into koichas atuma, which would gather animals together. So teaches the Rambam. And we're going to learn soon on Daf Ches Amud Aleph that when Pinchas ben Yair, who had this capacity, he was once challenged, or he almost got insulted. No one should, God forbid, think that what he's doing is connected at all to what that isur is. And I'll speak a little bit more about this capacity of gathering, but he gathered all the mice, the ones that were eating it up. And when he gathered them, they were talking to him. You know, you have a story in the Friedrich Rebbe's memoirs of one of the earlier Baal Shems who gathered all of the Shadim and they began to communicate with them. And there, in the story, he told them, please, not everyone at the same time. And one of them read the whole story with an inn and how it was possessed with demons because the owner, who had no kids, used to speak nivel peh, which created the whole Gavaldik mice. Coming back over here. So the mice are communicating. So Shuroim, mitzavtzefen, they began to be mitzavtzef. They began to make mouse sounds, but he understood it. So Amar Loina Pinchas ben Yair asked the Olam over there, Yadin Atun Ma'inanon, do you understand what they're saying? Amrulay Loin, no, we don't understand. He understood. So Amrulay, he told him, Amrin the Loina Sakana, they're telling me that the produce that they're eating is produce that you did not properly tithe, you did not give all the Trumas Umaisris. So you had no right to it. They were laying claim to it. So they want to do tshuva. But they want to make sure that when they're going to do tshuva, he'll give them a bracha that the mice will stop doing it, because once the mice have a habit, there's one thing they shouldn't come. Once they come, you got a problem. So Amrulay, so they told Rav Pinchas, Urvan, let's learn Pshat Urvan means, please guarantee that if we'll do the right thing of doing tshuva, that this plague will be removed. And Va'arvain, and they gave them a guarantee, Arevus, he guaranteed them. And indeed, V'loi Inchain, they no longer came to diminish the produce that they had. Now, I want to say the same concept, that when people are not yet on the level of tzaddik, let's call our Yetzer Hara as rats, which is what they are. So if a Beinoni, the best case scenario is that I'm pushing them away, can't communicate with them. Because if I'm going to allow myself to listen to them, they're going to get the better of me. So don't look, don't touch. Only a tzaddik he elevated them. That means he's able to have a dialogue with the animal and win the dialogue. And what's the dialogue? The dialogue is the acknowledgement that if I don't do what God wants, the animals will have a koyach over me. But if, in other words, the more I do the asay toiv, the more empowered I am, even when talking to my rat, to tell the rat, you leave me, instead of the rat telling me, no, I got you. And let's go to the Tavches. Next story, which is similar. That Margoli min de Malka, a gem, and Margolius means a pearl. Doesn't have to mean a pearl, but a precious stone of a certain king, is Sarkoya Naflas. Sarkoya means an Arab. An Arab king had a Margolius, and it fell. And what happened was, Ubalas Chadach, but a certain rodent swallowed it. And he wanted his gem back. He already heard of the other story. We have to find the correct rat. Then we have to get the rat to give it up. All right? And like the Rambam writes in his Hagdama Lepedic Chelik that we're going to learn over Shavuos, that these stories don't need to be literal. They could be. But you understand something. If you get the right rat, you can just cut it open. We'll see that the koyach was the rat itself gave it up. But let's see what happened. So this king had to go to the tzaddik, went to the Pinchas ben Yair. And Amar Le, Pinchas ben Yair, right away told him, Ma ano, how do you see me? Do you see me as a chaboir? Chaboir is the chover chaver. I don't do that. Amar Le, so this king told him, no, lishmach tava aseis. I'm coming to you because you have a good name. Now, I just perhaps that shem toiv can mean shem kodesh. In other words, that I know other people that can use the dark arts to gather the animals, the rats, but you do it by using a shem kodesh, a good name, maybe. You're doing it in the right way, not in the wrong way. But he told him, no, you have a good name. I don't suspect you to doing kishu. So once he wasn't under suspect, again, the word is gezeda. Gizar aleihon, same words we had before. He made some sort of gezeda, and utzamatun, and they gathered. Now, what's amazing is that he had such a koyach, he could have just commanded for the rat that swallowed the gem to come. He didn't do that. It doesn't work that way. He gathered all the rats. And Chama, he saw Chad Magbaba Asi, that one was walking hunchback because he swallowed this big gem. So, Omar, he says, Gabi Hahon Niu, it's that one. Now, again, if the story would be taken literally, chop the rat and cut it open. No. So Gzar al Ilave, he decreed on that rat, upalta, and he spit it up. That's hisapcha. He didn't fight with it anymore. He got the rat itself to give up, and he didn't kill it. And really, that's the ultimate. The ultimate is that in the choshech, in the darkness, in the rat, there was some gem. And that's the avoid of the tzaddik, to go into the darkness, not to live in the world of light, to live in both. But when you have to, when darkness got you, when they stole your gem, that's called the ultimate birur hanitzoitzes. We have the same word, just in another way. That the rapach nitzutzim, rafach is rapach. The reason why the goyim are stopping us is because that's the ultimate birur, to be mavara the rapach. What's rapach? That they have Yidden over there, they're hidden in the darkness. In other words, the worst darkness, the cruel, the evil, the worst thing in the world, but in there's something. And if you don't go, so when you're a Beinoni, you're not allowed to go there. That's what the world is saying. Gainish darkness. The tzaddik has the koyach to go in there and to get them to give up, or to get from them, for them to spit out the gem. Now, next story. Pinchas ben Yair, Pinchas went on a trip, and Asun legabe, and the people there came to him, and Amrulein, and they told him that Leis Mabuan Maspaklon, Mabun means that the springs of water, in the same concept, rain comes from the heavens. The springs of water come from inside the dirty earth. And you go in, when you go down in there, there's not enough springs. So Amar Loim, he told him, Dilma loy atum misakin, maybe you're not separating the tumas umaisris. See, misakin means you're separating. Separating l'chayim means hiskafia. So when you do the hiskafia enough, then you can do a sapcha maybe. You want to get the water, you want to get the water inside the earth. You have to know how to separate those. Amrulay, so the same thing. They said, you're right. We're going to start separating trumas and maasros. Don't forget, when there's not enough water, there's not enough produce. Like we want you to guarantee that when we'll do tshuva, things will get better. We get that because in Golus, we know the phenomena that a Jew can do tshuva, and begashmis things get worse. It happens a lot. The closer you get, and the more consequence for the little mistakes that you make. Okay, so maybe the same thing. So Amrulay Urban promise us that when we'll change our behavior by giving of Tumas Umaisis, the water will come back, and indeed Va'arvoin and Va'aspakloin, and from then on the water was sufficient for them because the waters came back. And again, the waters from under the ground, the same concept. The gem in the rat, the waters inside the earth. Right. Now Pinchas Binyon have a Ozal Beisvat. Now I just want to point out that the Mahara Fulda, right, when he says they went to the Beis Vad, so Vasas does the Beis Vad, the Beis HaMedrash. It sounds like he went to learn. The Gemara in Chulin, and Daf Zayin, begins the story of Rav Pinchas Ben Yair. Rav Pinchas Ben Yair have a Ka'azal Pidyon Shavuon. And in other words, it's from the rest of the story, it sounds like it's the same. Here he says, Lebeis Vad. The Rasha Ilio, to resolve the problem, look at the Rasha Ilio, it's like in the middle of the right column. He says that it wasn't the Beis Vad means Beis HaMedrash, but it must mean Mefarish Lepidyon Shavuon. And I'll tell you something. Why do we call it the Beis Vad? I was just thinking. Beis Vad means a gathering of people. I know Beis Vad lachachamim. Beis Vad is definitely used the Beis HaMedrash. But when people have communal issues, where do they gather to resolve it? In the Beis HaMedrash. So it's not a stira. And maybe I'm just thinking now. So why do we do it in the Beis HaMedrash? Because learning Torah is the world of light. The world of light. You're divorced. You're divorced from darkness. Pidyon Shavuin is the light in the darkness. That goyim, that tuma, chapta yid, chapta neshama, and they have them captive. What gives me the koyach to be able to go into the world and to redeem the captive? The koyach that I have because I'm connected to the Torah. Right? Rabbi Premishlan, if you're bound above, that even when you go down, you're not going to fall down. So you gather in a Beis Havad to avoid the Pidyon Shavuon. Maybe that's so. The Babli is emphasizing what the mission was. The Yerushalmi is emphasizing with what koyach that they have to do the avodah ultimately of a sapcha because they were properly connected to the Torah. In any event, this is what happens. But the Ginai River was not allowing him to pass over it. Amarle, so the Pinchas Ben Yair began to have a conversation with the river. In the Yerushalmi, it's such a simple thing that they don't elaborate. We're going to read the Babli. It's much more elaborated there. And he says, Ginai, Ginai. Ginai, Ginai, I think is Lashon Chiba. That's one of the rules. That means he did not look at the water as his enemy. When we have an obstacle, if you look at it as your enemy, you're already lost. No, Ginai, Ginai. Ma'at monalimi Beis Vad. Why are you not allowing me to go to the Beis Vad? And that's it. Uplak koima in the river split. Look inside the Babli. Against the Drash over there. Not so simple. Omalei, Ginai, only once. No Lashon Chiba. I'm reading the Babli. The river didn't split in the Babli. Omalei, the river responded, you're going to do the will of the Creator. Yeah, you're going to do Pidyon Shavuim. But I'm also doing what God wants. God told me to flow. Everyone is doing their job. Don't tell me I should stop doing my job because you need to do your job. And then he added, by you, Sofik ato oisa. Oisa means, well, do you accomplish? You might accomplish your mission and you might not accomplish. I'm for sure accomplishing. I'm flowing. That's a very rational argument. So the Pinchas Miyar became irrational. Amalei told him, if you won't split for me, Goizrani Olecha, again, his Gezeda with the mouse. I'm Goized, that you'll never do what God wants. Cholak. There was a lot of force into that. And then the Gemara adds, there was another Jew that was with him that was carrying wheat that was going to be used for Pesach. And you have to understand that if those waters get wet, that's shmura, then we don't use it for...
If the wheat gets wet.
The wheat gets wet. So he Amalei, so that Pinchas Ben Yair tells the water, also split for him. Why? Because he's doing a mitzvah. Once the water got accustomed to listening, so chaloiklei. And then Havahu Tayod, there was an Arab merchants. These Arabs, they go everywhere in the Gemara. The Liva Bahadayu, the Arab merchant who was accompanying the Yid. And if Pinchas Ben Yair and Cholik Neilahai split for him. Why? The loy lema for no one to suspect that we don't treat the people that accompany us properly and cholakly. So the tzaddik, the Rebbe, has the koyach of splitting a seed. What did the Rebbe accomplish for us? That as long as we're doing the mitzvahs, you go out, you do the Rebbe's work, the water splits for you, and then the person that's accompanying you will also get the water split for him. But in the Babli, there's no word of that. So students told him, Yochlan Anon Avrin, can we cross? They already knew what happened over there in Mitzrayim Lahavdil, that when the Mitzrayim crossed, the moments the Jews went out, the waters closed on them. So the Talmidim wanted to know whether they are worthy. On my line, it's amazing. So in the Babli, he was insisting the water should remain split. Here, they wanted to know, on my line, that man the other menafshi, anyone who knows their own truth, that what? They're like Akala Barnash bin Yisrael bin Yoimoi, that he never slighted another Jew, that has been Adam Lachaveiroi is perfect, not the mitzvah of Pesach, not the Ben Adam Lamach. If your Abbas Yisrael is good, Yavar V'loi Minke, you can pass, and it won't deduct from your merits. Whole different word. Then in the Bible. Okay. Now, next story. Rabbi Boy Mishrei Shemitza. So as we spoke in our words of introduction, that number one, Rabbi, unlike his colleagues, hold that when Kol Yoshveh is not allowed, which means that you don't have representatives of every tribe, Berubam, that are living on the designated part of Eretz Yisrael that belongs to that tribe, Yovel is not in effect, as it's not today. Furthermore, there is a link between Shemitah and Yovel, and therefore Rebbe holds that whenever Yovel is not Noyeg, Midoiraisa Shemitah is not Noyeg, but Shemitah is Noyeg Midrabanan by Egzeira. And there was a drought. There was no food. So Rebbe wanted to convene the Sanhedrin to make an overruling that for this year of the drought, there should be even Midrabanan no Shemitah, which would allow people to plant on the 7th year. There should be something. So that's an Rebbe wanted to be Mater Shemitah that year. It was a one-time thing. So like Rav Pinchas Ben Yair Legabe, Rav Pinchas Ben Yair wanted to join that convention. And Amalei, Rebbe tells Rav Pinchas Ben Yair, Ma'i Boraya Aviden. We had that word just before about the produce. How are the crops doing? You know, Rav Pinchas Ben Yair might not be happy with this leniency. He wanted to appeal to him, what's happening with the crops? Hoping that Rav Pinchas would say, "Oi, the Yidden are starving." What did he answer? So he answered, Amalei, Rav Pinchas says, Ulshan Yafis. Let's say Ulshan is endives. It's some sort of food that b'di'evet you can live off. He says, instead of him saying that, you're right, there's no grain, he said, the Ulshais are good. Look inside that Asherilio. It's in the middle of the Aleph column. Ulshais Yafis, v'dai lohen parnasa b'zem. It's enough. You can survive off it. And Rebbe did not want to hear that answer. This is the way the people have to learn how to talk. So he asked them again. Don't give me that the ulshois are good. I asked you, how is the grain? So he asked, Moi borai avidin, and Pinchas Ben Yair again answered that ulshin yafos. And because of that repetition and that response, v'yada Rebbe understood the lace who maskama imei. And what that Rebbe is not masking to make that leniency, and and he didn't. Now I want to suggest what was the back and forth. Rav Pinchas ben Yair, like we mentioned, perhaps, right, that tzaddik, his koyach, his unique koyach was the koyach of hisap. Ulshois, living off ulshois instead of living off grain, is an exercise in hiskafia. You're denying yourself. So Rabbi thought that Rav Pinchas ben Yair, who already moved on to a sapcha, won't underline the importance of hiskafia. Rav Pinchas says, no, hiskafia. Almost like the food, the bread is hard, good. There was a yeshiva bayas in Brinoa when the tzaddik was alive, Rav Nissen, they bought bread and they gave it to the Talmudim 2 days later. Skafia has the same nutritious value, but why you have to have that soft bread? Have hard bread. In other words, he's skafia. Amalei. So according to the way we're learning over here, once Rebbe felt he lost this, he's not doing it, so he asked Rav Pinchas ben Yair, who the Gemara says in Babli was a Yid who had as his virtue, as one of his midas hachasidus, not to eat off other people's tables. And so Rebbe told him that Mashkach Rebbe means, Rebbe is saying it, but Rebbe is Rebbe Yehuda Hanasi. He's calling that Pinchas ben Yair Rebbe, that Mashkach Rebbe Mechel Iman, will Rebbe agree to eat with us? Sifchar Petal Yoimadein. Now, if the girsa is with a pay, just to know the word pay means rich food. And maybe Rebbe was very wealthy. And there was a hunger. So he told him, would you like to come and eat rich food? Maybe Rebbe, if that's the girsa, was hoping that if Pinchas ben Yair would eat the rich food, he'll have more compassion and he'll join this hataras of the Gezeda for people to have average food. But maybe the word is written with a base, and a base means to eat in the shade. In other words, if the food is not enough, not good, not ideal, the setting is ideal. Would you join us in the shade to have a meal? And Rav Pinchas ben Yair shockingly said yes. Now I'm going to read the story here, and then we're going to go into it again. Chulun Dav Zayin Amud Beis, and again the story is written differently. But let's read how it's written over here. So now, mi neches nochas. When a Pinchas ben Yair went down, if the base vad was on the second story, it makes sense. He went down, and Chama, and he saw before, the staircases were outside the houses. So they went down, and he was going to enter Rebbe's house for the meal that he accepted the invitation to. But he saw that mulvasa the Rebbe Kaiman, he saw certain types of white mules that are dangerous, that belong to Rebbe, that were standing on his property, and he right away got upset. And he said, he says, Kol Ilan Yehuda Yizanim, are Jews feeding such animals, such dangerous animals? He says that maybe he'll never see me again. I'm upset with Rebbe. How can he have such a dangerous animal? And again, perhaps, I'm just saying perhaps, that this whole avodah about tzaddik, Rebbe was also a tzaddik. So a tzaddik is involved in the koyach of hisapcha. But when you're involved in the koyach of hisapcha and you're going into the dark to get the sparks, don't think you can go into any darkness. There's different types of darknesses, right? You have a donkey, and you have a mouse or a rat, and then you have these white mules. These white mules maybe is the darkness that gets dressed like white. This is the worst darkness. You got to be careful. He was not happy that Rebbe had. That's the story over here. What it says in the Bible before we go on, is that he accepted the invitation, right? And I'm reading in the Bible, Dav Zayin based on the top, yes. And so how upon him Rebbe was radiant because he normally would not accept invitations. So Amaloi, Pinchas ben Yair, when he saw Rebbe was so happy, he got insulted. He says, your over happiness implies that you're shocked that I'm taking the invitation. You're misunderstanding me. Do you think that I made a vow never to have benefits from a Jew? I would never make such a vow because Yidden are Kedoshim. But then he explained, and these are his words. Some people really want the guests to come over. When they do achnos asarchem, they really want it, but they don't have enough food. So he would not go there. And then there are certain people that can really afford to have a guest, but really they don't want. He was just explaining why he never accepted an invitation. Not because he would accept an invitation, but it's never genuine. Either the person doesn't want or the person doesn't have. And therefore, va'ato, you, Rabbi, you're Roitza, and the Yeshlach. So that's why I accept it. Don't be so smiley faced. Yeah, of course I'll accept. But Mia Hashta, Miss Harvina, I'm going to delay. I'm going to hesitate because the Bemilsa the mitzvah katorach. Because opinion shuin, I'm not going to eat before I finish my job. I'm going to go finish my job. And when I'm going to come back, I'm going to go to you. And the Gemara says over there that Ki also, when he came back, that's in the Babli. So Israme, what happened? Oh, Bahu Pischodava Kaiman Bey, Kundiniyasa Chivarta. He saw when he was coming back, he saw the white mules of Rabbi and the Omar, and he said the white mules could be very dangerous. He says, Malach Hamavis Bebeisa Shalzed, the Malach Hamavis is in the house of him, of Rabbi. I'm going to go eat there. So he left. Rabbi heard he's coming, then he heard he left. So Shama Rabbi Nofaklapi, Rabbi went after him. Amalei, and Rabbi tells him that Mizdabnina Luhu, I'll sell them. I got it. Amalei, Lifneiva Lisita Nichshel. To whom are you going to sell it? He trapped him. And the end is that Rabbi was chasing him, and Rabbi was imploring by him, and he didn't want to go. I'm reading in the Babli. So Asa Tura Benayu. So a mountain rose to separate Rabbi from Rav Pinchas ben Yair. And that's how he got out of the invitation. A mountain was created. We're going to learn, again, the same story written differently. Now, Oslan v'amrun Rebbe, the servants told Rebbe that Rav Pinchas ben Yair, because of him seeing that Rebbe had in his property white mules, real danger is darkness that dresses like light. Oh, so Shalach Rebbe, boy, Rebbe wanted to appease him. Rebbe says, no, don't run away. What happened was that Rabbi Pinchas was already moving. So so the delegation that Rabbi sent to get him back, they reached him near his city. Rav Pinchas ben Yair was already back in his home. So Amar Rav Pinchas ben Yair, who didn't want to return to Rabbi, this way out is not to say no, don't even engage. So he asked, he says, residents of my city, come and surround me, in order for the delegation of Rebbe not even to be able to get near it. And that's what happened. The residents of his city came and they surrounded it. Amron, the delegation of Rebbe, said to all of the Chevra, listen, Rebbe, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, he wants to appease him. Allow us to get to him. When they heard that, they walked away. So So the city people began to walk away. So now he's, so to say, unprotected. So Amar of Pinchas ben Yair says, B'nei Didi. B'nei Didi means, Nishta Amcha, my Chasidim, my Shluchim, my people stand with me. I don't want to engage with them. Kurvili. And what happened? Nachas eshta min hashamayim, a fire from the heaven came down. In other words, the people in the city didn't want to get in between Rabbi and Pinchas ben Yair. So who came? A fire came. And what does the Babli call that? A mountain. And that's the way it is. In other words, it could be the more ruchniistic people, they saw the fire. The holier saw the fire. The people that are not on the level of the Bnei Yerushalmi, they saw a mountain. It was something beruchniis enclosed in something gashmis. Depends what you see. Aslan v'amrun l'Rebbe. They went back there and told Rebbe that, listen, the fire, we were even unable to ask him. That's it. Amar Rebbe says, since we did not merit nisba minei, for us to be soiveya, for us to have a meal in this world, may we merit, we'll merit to be in the world to come. Since we didn't in this world, we will in that world. What was meant us? I'll tell you what it means. Because Rav Pinchas ben Yair, when Rebbe invited him, what did he say? He said, I'm coming. So his word has to happen. So instead of being disappointed, he says, okay, he's eating with me. I wanted it to happen now, but don't think a word of a tzaddik is falling on the side. So you have all these stories where a tzaddik told a Jew, let's say that you'll merit to live to Mashiach. The word of the tzaddik is standing. Not the way we thought, but just because it's not happening the way we want, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Go on.
It reminds me of the Alter Rebbe going to the Nolam Gaon and not being able to meet with him.
Okay. Okay. Mekabel. Says the Gemara. And now we're having another story with Pinchas ben Yair, also in the Bavli, but in Yevamos Daf Kuf Chaf Aleph and in the Bava Kama on Daf Nun. In the Gemara in Bavli, we say the story regarding a Nechunya Chayfer Bayros. There was a Jew called Nechunya, and his mitzvah was to dig wells, so when the Yidden come to Yerushalmi, they should always have water, amply supplied water. And then something happened with his family member in the water, and there was like a big injustice that the mitzvah that he did was a mitzvah through whom he was getting punished. The Gemara here doesn't give the name, but it's a similar story. Again, it's the same story with differences again. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachman says, instead of giving him a name, like we have it in the Bavli Nechunya, if it's the same story, which probably it is, here it's called Maisa B'Chasadecha. And Lahoyer, that if it's the same story, so Nechunya, right, from Nechama, how do you define a chassid? Maybe that's how he was. He consoled, he helped other people, he gave them water. Person is dying of thirst. You give them water, you're being menachem them. Maybe that's the definition of a chassid. And like we said, Pinchas ben Yair and the Yerushalmi just cared ben adam lachaveiroi, not just cared. He says that's the ikar. If you're good ben adam lachaveiroi, not al machman on Pesach, you're good, then the waters will split for you. That was his mitzvah. He always made sure that there's water available for everyone. There was a time that when his daughter was going to get married, on the way to her chuppah, a river, water flooded, and as far as he understood, she was taken by the waters. Normally that meant that she was no longer amongst the living. And everyone went to visit her. And boy, they were trying to console him, but he was not allowing himself to get consoled. So, Pinchas went to visit him. Boy, Menachem was trying to console him, and he was not accepting consolation. Now, such a concept we have in the Chumash that Yaakov Avinu was not getting consolation, right? We learned that Chumash Rashi, Chitas, there's a God-made exeda that when there is a passing, at some point, a person allows oneself to get consoled. Since Yosef HaTzadik really did not pass away, so that's why Yaakov Avinu was never getting consoled. What we'll discover over here is that the daughter never passed away. Bottom line is, no one knew that. It made sense that the daughter died. He's not allowing himself to be Mekabel Nechumen. And Amalayim, so that Pinchas ben Yair, not lay. He made a statement to the Olam. He told him, go be Menachem a chassid. He says, that's a chassid. A chassid is someone who's not accepting the decree of God. Deinu chasidcha, this is your chassid, the Marafulda, 60 lines from the top. A little bit before the middle of the Marafulda. Deinu, the chizehu chassid shalachem. Sha'atem oivnim olav shu chassid. Ve'ein makabel tanchumen. Ve'ein zamaisa chasidis. The capacity. Now this is there was a time and there's a time, and he felt that if he indeed would have been a chassid, and if indeed this daughter passed away, he would not have been in the place where he's at. So Amrulay Rebbe, so they told the Rebbe, no, you don't understand what's unique about him. That his whole mitzvah was providing water for the people. And and water was what brought him the calamity. Amar, when Pinchas ben Yair heard this, he says that cannot be. Amar, he says, he gave honor to our Creator through water. When the Creator is being mekapechem, is cutting him down. The ultimate cutting down is when a person, God forbid, loses a child with water. So that Pinchas ben Yair knew it can be. And what happened? Indeed, there was a rumor that spread that what? The rumor spread that she was swept away, but they found him. Interesting that it's not that she came back straight, but there was a rumor and then she came back. And is the Amri, this sichsa is arat, that she was caught by a peg, she was caught by a branch. That's how she survived not drowning. There's the Amri, Malach Yonad b'demos Rav Pinchas ben Yair v'etzim. So let's go with the second one, that it was at the time that Rav Pinchas ben Yair was conversing with him. And Rav Pinchas ben Yair made the statement, it can't be that she's dying. She was still alive. She was about to die. And his statement brought about a Yeshua for her. And the Yeshua came with the mus of Rav Pinchas ben Yair. How great is that? Says the Gemara. And we're closing this whole topic. It began with Rab Se'era inadvertently let's say it was the mai, or on some level eating something that wasn't properly tithed, b'shoigeg, Rab Chanina ben Doisa, that's from the era of the Tanoim, right? From the earlier generation, God did protect him from achalas asures. What happened? He was eating Friday night, and while he's eating psach psoida kone, his little table, they had little table lock, the table collapsed. So Omar Lei, to which Rab Chanina ben Doisa says, "Ooh, table collapsed." Maukein. Omar Lei, he says, maybe the table collapsed because God is telling me not to eat the food. And he told them that Tavlin Sha'alti Mishchanti, I borrowed spices from my neighbor. Says the Marafulda, 9 lines from the bottom, that even though we learned that spices don't need to be tithed, that's not the spices that he was talking about. He says these were spices that were themselves oichel. In other words, it was something that maybe some people thought don't have to be tithed, but this does need. I'm reading the Marafulda. Hainu oisan she'ein oichel. Aval stam tavlin ptunim in a maisis. But that is chayv in maisis. And v'lo yisarti. In other words, there was an issue that some of the food was not properly tithed. Now, I know it's late. I just want to give a heads up that on one hand, midrabanan, one is not allowed to separate trumas from maisis on Shabbos. Midrabanan, it's called tikkun mana, even though it's not discernible, but it's tikkun mana. And we're going to learn in the 7th chapter of the Masechtas Damai here on Daf Samachei, in our pagination on Daf Samach Vav, that there is a solution for someone who's going to get invited by Ya'am Ha'aretz. And Ya'am Ha'aretz is not completely Neman. There are certain declarations that you can make before Shabbos. It's called making a stipulation. We're going to speak about it later, which will allow you to resolve it on Shabbos. And that's what happened. He was eating Friday night, but the table fell. He says, "Ooh, there might be a problem." And indeed, there was some sort of problem of things not being properly tight. But he also remembered that Tiyanin means he made the Tanai, which will allow him to be misakin it right now. He was misakin whatever needed to do a tikkun, and then the table came up by itself. The collapsed table came up by itself. How good? That's Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa. And the final
spices that are in the food, it's already cooked in there. You could still somehow separate out the demai.
Yes, you could. Yes, you could. Yeah, because you can approximate or get for sure. I know by Maestros there's no approximation. 1%.
You're not actually taking it from there. You have to
we'll learn in Pedig Shiri how this is done. The Trumas Maestros has to be taken from there. The Maestros Sheni could be removed and then redeemed. And maybe because Al Karbala Asr Umadois, maybe someone might have asked, how do you know you got the exact amount? Maybe that's why a miracle happened, that the table was rebuilt by itself. Another thing that you can't build the table on Shabbos. The question is, how did God build the table on Shabbos? Akashis. Rab Tarfin, I want to give an answer to that we learned in Menachos, right? That the last 8 psukim of the Torah, Machlekes who wrote it. Yeshua wrote it, Moshe Rabbeinu died. How can Moshe Rabbeinu write it? Moshe Rabbeinu was alive if he wrote it. So on that sugi, the Tosfos asks, Moshe Rabbeinu passed away on Shabbos. He wrote the Sifrei Torah on the last day of his life. Tosfos says he might have written it on Friday, but most people only wrote it on Shabbos. How can you write on Shabbos? To which Tosfos answers that Hashbos HaKlum, that it was some sort of mystical. You adjure the pen, and the pen writes by itself. That you can do on Shabbos, and that's how he wrote certain Sifrei Torah on one day, even if it would not be on Shabbos. So the same thing over when things are happening in a miraculous way, it's not called building. Let's just finish the final story. Same thing, he was eating, and what happened by him was the bread fell off his hand. By us, it's called shlamazel. By the Tarfin, no. Why did it fall amrulei? So they told him, okay, whoa, Rebbe, why is this? So he told them, I'll tell you why. That kurdam sha'alti v'sisi al gabat harois, I borrowed an axe. And as the Marafulda says, he realized that he borrowed an axe that might be coming. Even though Rab Tarfin was eating chulin, but his chumrah was to eat chulin al kara. And he realized that there's an issue with tum and tara. And because of that, the bread fell out of his hand.
Yeah.